I woke up in a hospital bed 3 days after emergency heart surgery to find a voicemail from my former colleague Carlos. "Marcus, I don't know how to tell you this, but the team just presented your project to the board, your $50 million logistics system, and your name wasn't mentioned once, not even a footnote." My hands were still shaking from the anesthesia as I opened my work email. There it was, a press release announcing the revolutionary new AI-driven logistics platform, greenlit for immediate deployment, projected to save the company $50 million annually. The lead developer listed was Devin Hayes, the kid I'd mentored for 3 years like he was my own son. The project lead was Kirk Sullivan, my wife's nephew who barely understood basic coding. My name appeared nowhere. Before I tell you how the error I deliberately left in that code brought down everyone who betrayed me, hit that like button and subscribe. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let me take you back to that hospital room where everything changed. My name is Marcus Bennett. I'm 54 years old, and I'd spent the last 7 years developing the most sophisticated logistics optimization system in the industry. An AI-driven platform that could route industrial shipments, predict maintenance needs, and cut costs by analyzing millions of data points in real time. It was my life's work, built late at night after everyone else went home, refined through countless iterations, perfected through pure obsession. 3 days before my presentation to the board, I'd collapsed at my desk. Emergency heart surgery followed immediately. Triple bypass. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. While I was unconscious on an operating table fighting for my life, my team had taken my 7 years of work and presented it as their own. I grabbed my phone and started digging through emails. The board meeting minutes were there. Devin Hayes and Kirk Sullivan presented a groundbreaking logistics platform, the notes read. Unanimous approval for immediate implementation. Budget allocated $50 million. Not a single mention of my name. I'd brought Devin into the company fresh out of college. I'd taught him everything, stayed late helping him debug code, and recommended him for promotions. Kirk was different. My wife's nephew hired as a favor, someone who'd failed at 3 previous tech jobs. I'd taken him on reluctantly, tried to teach him the basics. I pulled up the project repository on my laptop, the one the hospital had brought me after I'd insisted I needed to check something. My heart monitor beeped faster as I scrolled through the commit history. My username had been systematically removed from every single entry. Thousands of commits, years of work, and my name was gone. Completely wiped, like I'd never existed. The current repository showed Devin as the primary author with Kirk as project lead. I checked the patent application that had been filed 2 weeks ago. The names listed were Devin Hayes and Kirk Sullivan. I wasn't even in the footnotes. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the laptop. 7 years. 7 years of my life, and they'd erased me in 3 days while I was unconscious. I checked the internal documentation. Someone had gone through and replaced my name with Devin's in every design document, every technical specification, every architecture diagram. It was thorough, systematic, deliberate. This wasn't an accident or an oversight. This was a planned theft. Then I noticed something else. The source control showed they'd pushed the system to production status yesterday. They'd deployed it. My incomplete, deliberately unfinished code was now live and processing real client data. I started laughing, a sound that made my chest hurt, and the nurse looked concerned. They had no idea what they'd done. I was released from the hospital 5 days later. My wife Amanda picked me up, and the drive home was uncomfortable and silent. She kept glancing at me nervously, asking if I was feeling okay, if I needed anything. When we got home, I found Kirk's car in my driveway. He was staying in our guest room. "He's been helping out while you are recovering," Amanda explained quickly. "Taking care of things, making sure everything was handled." I sat down at the kitchen table and asked her directly, "Did you know they were taking my project?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Marcus, you were in surgery. You were dying. The project had to move forward. The board meeting was scheduled. They couldn't wait." "They could have waited a week," I said quietly. "They could have mentioned my name." Amanda's face flushed. "Kirk said you'd be angry. He said you'd try to take credit for teamwork. This was always a collaborative effort, Marcus. You don't own ideas." I stared at her. We'd been married for 16 years, and she was looking at me like I was the problem. What else happened while I was unconscious, I asked. She hesitated too long. Amanda, what else? She finally admitted it. While I was in surgery, she and Kirk had discussed filing for power of attorney, claiming I was incapacitated, giving them control of my finances and my intellectual property rights. Just in case something happened, she said defensively. We thought we were being responsible. I spent the next 2 days going through my old files, remembering how this had all started. 7 years ago, I'd been working on optimization algorithms when I realized there was a gap in the market. Industrial logistics was still using outdated systems, wasting billions annually on inefficient routing and poor predictive maintenance. I'd started building something better. At first, it was just nights and weekends, my personal project. Then I brought it to my company, proposed making it an official initiative. They'd given me a small team and minimal budget. I'd brought Devin on board first. Fresh graduate, brilliant but raw, eager to learn. I'd mentored him carefully, teaching him not just coding, but systems thinking, architecture design, the art of building something that would last. Then Amanda had pushed me to hire Kirk. He needs a break, she'd said. He's family. You can teach him like you taught Devin. Kirk had been a disaster from day one. Couldn't understand basic concepts, made errors that took hours to fix, spent more time talking about the project than working on it. But he was family, so I'd kept him on, trying to find tasks he could actually handle. I'd been transparent with both of them, showing them the full architecture, explaining my vision, treating them like partners and building something revolutionary. That had been my mistake. I'd trusted them with everything, and they'd used that trust to cut me out completely. But they didn't understand what they'd stolen. The code was enormously complex, with interdependent modules that required specific initialization sequences. I designed it that way deliberately, building in safeguards and fail-safes that only I fully understood. The most important safeguard was something I always did with major projects. I left one critical module incomplete until the very end. A deliberate gap in the code that looked like it might work, but would fail catastrophically under real-world load. I called it my insurance policy. If someone tried to deploy the system before I'd finished that final piece, they'd discover very quickly that they needed me. The module in question was Function 22B, a data validation and routing subroutine buried deep in the core architecture. It looked complete to anyone doing a surface-level code review. It would even pass basic testing, but under production load, with real data flowing through real client systems, it would start corrupting routing tables, misaligning logistics chains, creating cascading errors that would multiply exponentially. I logged into the back-end system from my home computer, using credentials they hadn't thought to revoke yet. The production logs were there, clean and normal. They pushed my incomplete code live 3 days ago. Everything looked fine. But I knew better. Function 22B had a built-in timer, a gradual degradation that would take 2 weeks to manifest fully. They had 11 days before their world fell apart. On Monday, 8 days after my surgery, I went into the office unannounced. Nobody expected me back yet. The doctor had cleared me for light duty, and I wanted to see their faces when I walked in. The elevator ride to the 5th floor felt longer than usual. When I stepped out, conversations stopped. People stared like I was a ghost. Some looked away quickly, embarrassed. Others whispered to each other behind their hands. I walked straight to the main conference room, where I knew the morning development meeting would be happening. I opened the door without knocking. Devin was at the head of the table, my usual seat, presenting metrics on a large screen. Kirk sat beside him, nodding along like he understood what he was looking at. The room went silent when they saw me. "Marcus," Devin said, his voice carefully neutral. "We didn't expect you back so soon. How are you feeling?" I ignored the question. I saw the press release. Congratulations on the successful presentation. Devin had the decency to look uncomfortable, but only for a moment. "Look, Marcus, you were out. The project had to move forward. The board meeting was scheduled months ago. We couldn't delay a $50 million initiative because one team member was unavailable." One team member. 7 years of my work reduced to one team member. I noticed he was wearing the Rolex I'd given him when he became a senior developer. I'd saved 3 months to buy that watch. I understand, I said quietly. I'm sure you'll do great things with it. I went straight from that meeting to HR and legal. Surely someone would see that this was wrong, that my intellectual property had been stolen. The HR director, a woman named Patricia who'd always been professional with me, looked genuinely sympathetic but ultimately helpless. Marcus, I've reviewed the repository records. Your name isn't on the final IP registration. There's no documentation showing you as the primary author. I pulled out my laptop and showed her my personal email archive, messages going back 7 years showing the project's evolution, conversations with Devin where I was clearly teaching and directing, Git logs from my home system showing early development work. She looked through everything carefully, then sighed. This helps, but it's not definitive. The company legal team is saying that since the work was done on company time, using company resources, and the final product was a team effort, it's corporate intellectual property, regardless of individual contributions. The company lawyer, a cold man named Harrison, was more blunt. Unless you can prove you owned the working product independently, outside of your employment, it's corporate property now. The fact that your name was removed from documentation is unfortunate, but it doesn't change ownership. They erased me deliberately, I said. That's not an oversight, that's theft. Harrison shrugged. It's an internal personnel matter. You can file a grievance, but frankly, Mr. Bennett, you're not going to win this fight. I left the legal office and headed to my workspace to gather my personal belongings. When I got there, I found the door to my old office open and Kirk sitting at my desk. My desk, where I'd spent 7 years building what they'd stolen. Oh, hey Marcus, Kirk said, not even standing up. Yeah, they reassigned offices while you were out. I'm project lead now, so I needed the bigger space. Your stuff is in that box by the door. He pointed to a cardboard box containing my personal effects. Photos of my kids, the award I'd won 3 years ago for innovation, my favorite coffee mug, a stress ball shaped like a brain that my team had given me as a joke, all of it crammed into one box like garbage. I streamlined things, Kirk continued, gesturing around at my office that he'd already made his own. Got rid of all the clutter. This is a leadership space now. On top of the box was a sticky note in my wife's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. The note read, "Please don't make this harder than it is. Kirk deserves this opportunity. We all need to move forward." I picked up the box without saying anything. But I also picked up something else, something Kirk hadn't noticed. The old external hard drive I kept in my desk drawer, the one I'd used during the early development phase 7 years ago before the project became official. Kirk watched me leave with that same smirk on his face, already turning back to his computer, like I was already forgotten. At home, I locked myself in my office and plugged in the external hard drive. It took a few minutes to spin up, the old mechanism whirring and clicking. Then the files appeared. Everything. The original architecture from 7 years ago, complete with version timestamps showing my solo work before I'd ever brought it to the company. Design documents with my unique internal tagging system, code comments in my distinctive style. And most importantly, the early versions of Function 22B, clearly labeled as incomplete, finish before production deployment. The notes I'd left for myself were explicit. 22B requires manual calibration based on the production environment. Auto-deployment will cause data corruption within 14 days of activation under real load. Must complete validation protocols before go-live. They'd activated the system 12 days ago, which meant they had 2 days before the corruption became visible and maybe 4 days before it became catastrophic. I opened my monitoring dashboard, one I'd built into the system that fed to my personal server. Something they didn't know existed. The error logs were already showing warning signs. Small data misalignments, routing conflicts, validation failures that the system was currently compensating for, but wouldn't be able to handle much longer. Function 22B wasn't broken. It was a trigger, a time bomb I'd built in deliberately, and they'd armed it by pushing incomplete code to production. I smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. My chest hurt from the surgery, but my mind was clear. They'd stolen my work. Now they are about to learn what happens when you deploy code you don't understand. Over the next 3 days, I watched from home as the system began to fail. My private monitoring dashboard showed the data corruption spreading like cancer through the logistics network. First, small errors. A shipment routed to the wrong depot, a maintenance schedule delayed by 12 hours. Then bigger problems. An entire convoy rerouted to a facility 600 miles off course, costing the client tens of thousands in fuel and time. By day 14, the problems were impossible to ignore. I heard through Carlos, who was still feeding me information, that the main operations center was in chaos. Client calls were flooding in, multi-million-dollar shipments were going to wrong locations. The AI predictions that were supposed to optimize routes were instead creating massive inefficiencies. The system they deployed to save $50 million was now costing them millions every day it ran. The internal emails Carlos forwarded me were panicked. What's happening with the routing algorithms? Why is function 22B throwing validation errors? Who tested this before deployment? Nobody had answers because the only person who understood the architecture was me, and I wasn't there anymore. The VP of Operations sent an all-hands email demanding to know who had authorized deploying Module 22B without complete testing. The silence in response must have been deafening. Devin and Kirk had pushed the system live without understanding what they were pushing. They'd wanted credit for the launch, wanted to show the board immediate results, and they'd skipped the validation protocols I would have run. Now they were drowning. On day 16, my phone rang. It was Gene Westbrook, the CTO, someone who'd always treated me with respect before all this happened. His voicemail was desperate. "Marcus, it's Gene. Look, I know things have been complicated, but something's seriously wrong with the logistics system. We're hemorrhaging money. Clients are threatening to pull contracts. The data corruption is spreading faster than the team can patch it. I know this was your project originally. Is there any way you could help us?" "This is really bad, Marcus. Really, really bad. Please call me back." I stared at the phone, considering whether to even respond. Before I could decide, another call came through. Different number, different area code. I answered. "Mr. Bennett? This is Troy Kaufman from Apex Systems. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Apex Systems. Our biggest competitor, a company I'd nearly joined years ago before deciding to stay and build my logistics platform. "How did you get my number?" I asked. Troy laughed. "The tech industry is smaller than you think. I've been following your career, Marcus. I saw the original concept presentation you gave 7 years ago at that conference in Boston. Brilliant work. I also saw the recent press releases about the new logistics platform, and I noticed your name wasn't mentioned. Then I started hearing about catastrophic deployment failures, so I thought I'd reach out." Troy got straight to the point. "I know what happened to you. I know they stole your work and cut you out. And I know that what they deployed is falling apart because they don't understand the architecture." He paused. "I want to make you an offer. Senior principal engineer, full autonomy over your projects, complete intellectual property rights to anything you develop. You'd have your own team, your own budget, and your name on everything you create. We'll even give you a signing bonus that reflects the value of what you lost." The offer was extraordinary. More money than I'd been making, better benefits, and most importantly, full credit and control over my work. "I'm interested," I said carefully, "but I have one condition." "Name it." "I want to bring my own team. There's an engineer named Ellis Porter at my current company. Brilliant developer, loyal, and he's been watching this disaster unfold. If I come to Apex, Ellis comes with me." Troy didn't hesitate. "Done. We'll extend offers to both of you by end of business today. Can you start in 2 weeks? "Yes," I said, then quieter. "Thank you for seeing my value. Marcus, people who build things like you built are rare. We'd be honored to have you." After I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Ellis Porter. "Marcus, I need to talk to you. This whole thing is wrong. I always knew you built the real system. What they deployed is a disaster. Can we meet?" I met Ellis at a coffee shop the next morning. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his usual neat appearance disheveled. "I quit this morning," he said as he sat down. "I couldn't be part of it anymore. What they did to you was wrong, and what's happening now is their fault entirely." Ellis had been on my team from the beginning. A quiet engineer who did excellent work without seeking spotlight or credit. While Devon and Kirk had been positioning themselves politically, Ellis had been actually coding, actually understanding the system architecture. Devon cut corners everywhere, Ellis continued. He deployed modules without proper testing because he wanted to impress the board with a fast timeline. Kirk doesn't understand any of the code, but kept overriding technical decisions with management directives. And when the errors started appearing, they tried to blame the QA team instead of admitting they'd rushed deployment. He pulled out a thumb drive. I saved logs from our internal meetings, discussions where Devon explicitly said we should skip validation protocols, messages where Kirk told him to push to production regardless of warning signs. I thought you might need this. I thanked him and told him about the Apex offer. They'll hire you too. Same level, same respect, clean slate working on something new. Ellis smiled for the first time. When do we start? 2 days later, Gene Westbrook showed up at my house. I watched him through the window, sitting in his BMW in my driveway for 5 minutes before finally getting the courage to knock. When I opened the door, he looked terrible. Marcus, can we talk, please? I let him into my living room. He sat on the edge of my couch like he might need to run at any moment. The board is furious, he said without preamble. We've lost 3 major clients. The data corruption has spread to archived records. We're looking at tens of millions in damages. The system you built, the one Devon and Kirk deployed, it's destroying us. The system I built was never finished, I corrected. What they deployed was incomplete. I never authorized production deployment. Gene ran his hands through his hair. I know that now. The technical audit showed that function 22B was never completed. Devon admitted he thought the error warnings were just legacy code comments he could ignore. He looked at me directly. We need you to come back. Fix this. Save the company. I'll make sure you get full credit, proper compensation, whatever you want. The board authorized me to offer you anything. I let the silence stretch for a long moment. I appreciate that, Gene. I really do. But I work somewhere else now. His face fell. What? Apex Systems made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Senior principal engineer, full autonomy, my own team. I start Monday. Marcus, please, we're desperate. Name your price. There is no price, I said quietly. You had me for 7 years. I gave you everything, and you let them erase me. Now they can fix their own mess. Gene's desperate visit was followed by something even better. A formal audit. Because of the massive data failures and client losses, the board demanded a complete technical and legal review of how the project had been developed and deployed. The audit team discovered exactly what I'd known all along. My name had been systematically and deliberately removed from version control, documentation, and IP filings. The forensic analyst's report was damning. Between the dates of January 15th and January 18th, while lead architect Marcus Bennett was hospitalized for emergency surgery, approximately 3,847 commit records were modified to remove his username and replace it with Devon Hayes. This was not a system error. This was manual manipulation of the repository history. The report went on to detail how Kirk Sullivan, despite being listed as project lead, had contributed virtually no code and demonstrated minimal understanding of the system architecture in technical interviews. The conclusion was clear. Intellectual property theft had occurred, and the deployment failure was the direct result of deploying incomplete code without proper validation. Kirk was placed on immediate administrative leave pending termination proceedings. Devon was demoted and reassigned. The company issued an internal memo acknowledging that I had been the primary architect and that my removal from credit was an unfortunate error in attribution that is being corrected. Too little, too late. I was already gone. That evening, Amanda came home with flowers and a nervous smile. She'd made reservations at my favorite restaurant, the expensive Italian place we only went to for anniversaries. I thought we could talk, she said. Really talk. I know things have been difficult, but we can work through this. We sat across from each other at a quiet table in the back. She talked about how stressful everything had been, how worried she'd been when I was in surgery, how Kirk had been trying to help and maybe gotten too involved. I made mistakes, she admitted. I should have defended you more. But we're family, Marcus. We can get past this. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope I'd prepared that afternoon. I slid it across the table. "What's this?" she asked. "Divorce papers," I said calmly. "You and Kirk tried to get power of attorney while I was unconscious. You helped erase me from my own work. You chose your nephew over your husband. I can forgive a lot of things, Amanda, but not that." Her face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Shock, anger, desperation. "You can't be serious. This is insane. I was trying to protect our financial interests. You were trying to steal my intellectual property," I corrected. "There's a difference." She stood up, her voice getting loud enough that other diners turned to look. "You'll regret this, Marcus. You're making a huge mistake. Kirk is family. He deserves respect." I stayed seated, perfectly calm. "So will Kirk," I said quietly. "So will Kirk." My first day at Apex Systems was everything I'd hoped for. Modern office, supportive colleagues, a development team that actually listened when I talked about architecture decisions. Within 2 weeks, Ellis and I had outlined Project Reclaim, a completely rebuilt logistics optimization system using all the lessons I'd learned from 7 years of development, but better. Cleaner code, more robust error handling, proper modular design. And most importantly, built from scratch with no connection to my former company's intellectual property. We worked 12-hour days, but they were joyful hours, creating something new, something mine, something that would have my name on every line of documentation. Apex gave us everything we needed. Cloud infrastructure, 3 additional engineers who were brilliant and humble, and complete freedom to build it right. 4 months later, we launched Project Reclaim to our first beta clients. The results were immediate and spectacular. 23% better efficiency than our closest competitor. Real-time routing that actually worked. Predictive maintenance that saved clients millions. Word spread fast in the industry. Companies that had signed with my former employer's buggy system started calling Apex, asking about switching. The sales team was ecstatic. Within 6 weeks, we'd captured 3 major clients. All 3 had previously been using the broken system my old company had deployed. When the news broke that these clients were switching, my former company's stock price dropped 17% in a single day. The financial press covered it as a cautionary tale about rushing products to market and failing to properly credit innovators. Then Ellis sent me something that changed everything. "I need to show you this," he said, coming into my office with his laptop. "I recorded this 6 months ago before your surgery. I'd forgotten about it until I was cleaning out my old files." He played the video. It was from an internal strategy meeting. Kirk was at the front of the room, presenting to senior management, and I wasn't there. I must have been on vacation or out sick. "The thing about Marcus," Kirk was saying on the video, his voice confident and dismissive, "is that he's old. He's slow. He thinks everything needs to be perfect before we can move forward. This company needs new blood, fresh ideas, people who aren't afraid to take risks and move fast." Devin's voice came from off camera. "He built the core system, though. We need him for that." Kirk laughed. "We have his code. We have his documentation. What we don't need is his ego slowing us down. Once the project launches, honestly, we could transition him out. Let him retire early. I can lead this going forward." The video ended. Ellis looked at me. "I've had this for months. I never showed it because I thought maybe I misunderstood the context. But after everything that happened, I think you need to see who they really were." I copied the file to my drive. Then I did something I'd never done before. I anonymously leaked it to Tech Insider, a major industry news site known for investigative journalism. The story broke 3 days later. Tech company Insider Video shows plot to push out lead engineer before theft of his work. The video went viral. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed over 2 million times. Kirk's face was everywhere, his smug voice talking about pushing out the old engineer echoing across social media. The backlash was immediate and severe. Investors started pulling funding. The company's Glassdoor reviews tanked as employees came forward with stories of toxic management and stolen credit. Major tech blogs covered it as an example of everything wrong with Silicon Valley culture. The company issued a public apology. "We deeply regret the treatment of Marcus Bennett, whose contributions to our logistics platform were fundamental. We are taking immediate steps to address internal culture issues and ensure proper attribution of work. But the damage was done. Their reputation was shattered. Stock continued to fall. Within a month, they'd announced layoffs, cutting 15% of their workforce. The press coverage continued, with articles dissecting how companies mistreat and undervalue experienced engineers. I was interviewed by several publications, though I kept my comments measured and professional. I'm focused on building great products at Apex, I said. The past is the past. Then a handwritten letter arrived at my office. The envelope was addressed to me personally, and inside was a note from Devin. Marcus, I'm sorry. I know those words mean nothing now, but I need you to know. Kirk threatened to tank my career if I didn't go along with taking credit. He said he'd tell the board I was incompetent, that I'd plagiarized work, that I'd never work in tech again. I was scared, I was weak, and I made the wrong choice. I betrayed someone who'd been nothing but good to me. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I understand what I did, and I'm sorry. Devin. I thought about that letter for 2 days. Then I called Devin and asked him to meet me at the same coffee shop where I'd met Ellis. He showed up looking 20 years older than when I'd last seen him. Thinner, tired, defeated. Thank you for meeting me, he said as he sat down. I didn't think you would. I almost didn't, I admitted, but I wanted to hear your side directly. Devin told me everything, how Kirk had been positioning himself politically from the moment he joined, building alliances with senior management, making promises about fast results and cutting-edge innovation. How Kirk had seen my hospitalization as an opportunity to accelerate his own agenda. He told me if I didn't support him, he'd destroy me, Devin said, and I believed him. So I went along with erasing your name from the commits. I helped with the documentation changes. I presented the project like it was mine. He looked at me directly. I tell myself I was coerced, but the truth is, I liked the credit. I liked having my name on something that big. I was weak and I'm sorry. I believed him. Not completely, but partially. Fear and ambition are powerful motivators, and Kirk had clearly exploited both. What are you doing now? I asked. Looking for work, he said. No one will hire me. My reputation is destroyed. I thought about it. Devin had betrayed me, but he'd also been 26 years old and manipulated by someone more ruthless. I'll give you one job, I said finally. Intern level. You'll work under Ellis. Entry-level pay. No credit, no glory, just work. You prove yourself from the bottom up. Devin's eyes filled with tears. I'll take it. Thank you, Marcus. I won't let you down again. While Devin was rebuilding his career from the ground up, I was building a legal case. With the forensic audit results, the leaked video, and the evidence from my old external hard drive, my lawyer filed a lawsuit against my former employer for intellectual property theft and wrongful credit attribution. You never signed over the original architecture, my lawyer explained. You developed the core system on your own time before it became a company project. The early versions on your personal hard drive prove that. Legally, they never properly acquired the IP. The case went public, covered extensively in tech news. Veteran engineer sues former employer for $50 million IP theft. The company knew they couldn't win. The evidence was overwhelming. Their own audit had confirmed what I was claiming. The leaked video showed premeditated intent to push me out. 2 months later, they settled. $12 million, plus a public acknowledgement that I was the original and primary architect of the logistics platform. The settlement included a clause requiring them to update all documentation, patents, and public materials to properly credit my work. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was the destruction of their reputation. The settlement made headlines. Company pays $12 million to engineer they tried to erase. Their remaining clients fled. Their stock never recovered. Within a year, they were acquired by a larger firm at a fraction of their previous valuation. Kirk Sullivan's name became synonymous with corporate theft in tech circles. He was formally blacklisted from major companies. Word spread fast. I heard through industry connections that Kirk had applied to several companies as a junior developer, trying to start over with a lower profile. Nobody would touch him. Recruiters who saw his name immediately moved his resume to the rejection pile. His LinkedIn profile showed he'd relocated twice, trying to escape his reputation. It followed him. 6 months after the settlement, I received a message through LinkedIn. It was from Amanda, my ex-wife. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier. She'd tried to fight it, tried to claim she deserved half of the settlement money, but her lawyer had advised her that helping Kirk steal my IP made her complicit, and pushing that argument would only hurt her case. Now she was messaging me. Marcus, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but Kirk is struggling. He can't find work. He's living in my basement. He's family. Please, can you help him? Maybe put in a good word somewhere? I know you're doing well at Apex. Please. I read the message 3 times. Then I typed a single word in response. No. I hit send and blocked her contact. For the first time in years, I felt completely in control. Clean. I hadn't raised my voice through any of this, hadn't broken any laws, hadn't sabotaged anyone. I'd simply let their own greed and incompetence undo them. Function 22B had been their trap, but they'd set it themselves by deploying code they didn't understand. I'd just built the system honestly, the way it should have been built. That same week, I made another decision. For my $12 million settlement, I donated $1 million to Code Future, a nonprofit that provided coding mentorship to underprivileged kids. I made the donation in Devin's name. Not to forgive him, but to show what redemption could look like. A year after leaving my old company, I officially retired from full-time work. Project Reclaim was thriving under Ellis's leadership. Devin had worked his way up from intern to junior developer and was actually doing solid work, humble and focused. Apex had promoted me to principal fellow, a lifetime achievement role that let me consult and mentor without the stress of daily management. I spent my mornings in my workshop at home, tinkering with new ideas, small projects, nothing that would consume my life, just the joy of building for building's sake. I started mentoring a few brilliant young developers, kids who reminded me of Devin before ambition corrupted him. We met at coffee shops and libraries, going over code, talking about architecture, discussing not just how to build systems, but how to build them ethically. No corporate politics, no title chasing, just the pure craft of making things that worked and helped people. One taught herself Python at 14 and was already better than most professional developers. Another had escaped a war-torn country and learned to code at refugee camps. They didn't need me to make them great. They just needed someone to believe in them. I gave them opportunities, introduced them to people, helped them build portfolios. Watching them succeed gave me more satisfaction than any project credit ever had. Then, 2 years after everything had happened, I received a letter at my home. The return address was my old company's headquarters. Inside was a brief note from someone I hadn't heard from in years, the CEO, Franklin Morse. The letter was handwritten, which surprised me. Franklin Morse was old school, corporate, usually communicating through assistants and lawyers. Marcus, it read, I'm stepping down as CEO at the end of this quarter. Before I go, I wanted to reach out personally. I know about everything that happened with your project. I know how badly we failed you. I was traveling during most of it, and by the time I returned and understood the full situation, the damage was done. I should have investigated more carefully. I should have protected you better. I can't undo what happened, but I'd like to meet with you if you're willing. Just coffee, no lawyers, no agenda. I'd like the chance to apologize in person and discuss how we can properly honor your contributions in our company's official history. You deserve that recognition. Would you be willing to meet? Respectfully, Franklin. I thought about it for a week. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let the past stay buried, but another part was curious about what he wanted to say. Finally, I agreed to meet at a quiet diner halfway between our homes. Franklin was there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, looking older and more tired than the last time I'd seen him. We ordered coffee. He got straight to it. I'm sorry, Marcus. Truly sorry. What Kirk and Devin did was unforgivable, and the fact that our systems allowed it to happen is a failure of leadership. My failure. I appreciate that, I said. Franklin continued. I've authorized a complete revision of our company archives. Your name will be properly credited as the original architect of the logistics platform. We're updating our patents, our public filings, everything. It won't undo the harm, but it's accurate. Thank you, I said. That matters. He pulled out a folder. I also wanted to offer you something, a permanent consulting position. Your name on our advisory board. Public recognition of your contributions. A way to make sure history remembers who really built what we tried to take credit for. I looked at the folder without opening it. The offer was generous, probably worth millions over time. It would put my name on the wall of a company worth billions, cement my legacy in their history. I appreciate the offer, Franklin. I really do. But I'm going to decline. He looked surprised. May I ask why? I smiled. You wanted my name on the wall of your company, but I've built something better. I'm at Apex now, working on projects where my name is on every line of code, every patent, every presentation. I'm mentoring kids who will change the industry. I'm building things that matter, with people who respect the work. I stood up and offered my hand. History will remember me just fine. Not because my name is on your wall, but because I never stopped building. Never stopped creating, never let being erased stop me from making something new. Franklin shook my hand, respect in his eyes. As I walked out of that diner into the bright afternoon sunlight, I felt complete. They'd tried to erase me. They'd failed. And I'd built something better from the ashes of their betrayal. If this story meant something to you, hit that like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments if you've ever had your work stolen and how you handled it. Thanks for watching.